Blog Talk Radio.
Hi everyone, happy Thanksgiving and welcome to Franchise Interviews, where we're asking the entrepreneur who owns one. I'm your host Marty McDermott, my co-host Don Johnson, and if you've ever dreamed of owning your own business, then you've come to the right place. Today we're celebrating our 3-year anniversary and 150th radio show, and we'll be meeting with Nancy Weingartner, executive editor of Franchise Times Magazine, and with Dr. John P. Hayes. And since 1979, Dr. Hayes has worked in the franchise community as a consultant, franchisee, and franchisor. He's the author of several related franchise books and countless articles that have appeared in media worldwide. And that's coming up in segment 2 of Franchise Interviews. So stick around because we got a great show.
Are you one of those special people who are willing to go after your dreams and goals? Are you ready to fulfill that dream of owning your own business with the security of a proven brand? The opportunity to take control of your future and own a Rita's Italian Ice franchise is within your reach.
Rita's is seeking success-oriented individuals who are ready to make a change in their life, and Rita's offers unparalleled training and support to assure your success. And did you know the frozen treat industry is a recession-proof industry, and there are Rita's in 23 states currently with 540 stores open. Rita's Italian Ice has been around for 25 years and is listed as a top-performing franchise by the Wall Street Journal.
Now here's the really good part. Rita's Italian Ice is a unique and amazing taste treat. It's smoother than a snow cone, and it combines ice with real fresh fruit. The real fruit adds dramatically to the taste, and it comes in over 40 flavors. The ice and fruit are mixed on site and made fresh daily, and it is delicious.
You'll want to know more about this exciting and successful franchise opportunity. Go to www.ownaritas.com and get all your questions answered. That's www.ownaritas.com to take control of your dreams and future today. You don't want to wait any longer to be a part of this adventure. www.ownaritas.com.
Who's helping build America one small business at a time? Franchise Inc., a free consulting service.
For years, Franchise Inc., a national company, has been helping people franchise their business concept and help folks like you own a franchise.
With over 2,500 franchise systems out there, it can be awfully confusing. Don't take chances with your future. At Franchise Inc., we've done the homework for you. We can help match your interest and background with the franchise that's right for you. And we only work with proven franchise systems with a solid reputation and track record of success.
The consultants at Franchising can help you with your short and long-term wealth strategy.
Give us a call today and we'll send you free our best-selling book, Solving the Puzzle of Owning a Franchise.
Remember, it's not just owning a franchise, but finding the right one for you. Call us at 800-961-0420 for a quick consultation to discuss what's important to you, your business, and your future.
The service is free. The book is free. What do you have to lose? Find the business that's right for you.
Call Franchise Inc. at 800-961-0420. That's Franchise Inc. at 800-961-0420.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to Franchise Interviews, where we're asking the entrepreneur who owns one. I'm your host Marty McDermott, with my co-host Don Johnson. And if you ever dreamed of owning your own business, then you've come to the right place. How you doing today, Don? Happy Thanksgiving. Welcome back.
Thank you, Marty. Doing fine. How's your week going?
Good, good. Ready for the holidays. I think it's a great day to celebrate our 150th show and 3-year anniversary, huh? Just ready for turkey and a little time off.
Definitely. Little time off, being with family and friends and relatives. So, yeah, definitely looking forward to that.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. Our last show, we met with Peter Markowitz, president of Mathnasium, and also franchisee John Opalka. And if you missed the show, Mathnasium Learning Center specializes in teaching kids math in a way that makes sense to them. Students go to Mathnasium year-round to catch up, keep up, and get ahead in math. I thought it was an interesting concept. What were your thoughts on last week?
Yeah, well, it's one of the fastest-growing franchises in children's education.
Right.
It's amazing. Another one of those niche franchises, just not in children's education in general, but just specifically in math.
Right.
That's amazing. You can have a franchise with that. But they're doing very well, growing internationally. And I was glad we had John on, the franchisee. He seemed like he was just a perfect fit to be a franchisee for them.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, it's just and the demand for this is pretty high. I can't remember how big the market was. Do you remember the numbers, Don? Wasn't it $200 billion or something like that? And I think it was being pretty conservative, So the demand for this service is pretty high. As far as suppliers go, to satisfy this need, there's not a lot of them out there just yet.
Right.
As you mentioned, it's a strong word we use in marketing. They have a niche in the market, and
I could have used that growing up. I wasn't that great in math. It's funny, I ended up being in business and franchise financing industry as a profession, and I was lousy at math.
Exactly.
I thought those guys would answer my math question real quick when they first came on.
I think you caught them off guard,
Yeah.
It's but yeah, they were a good bunch of guys. I went to their website, and they had a bunch of testimonials, of course, from their franchisees. And franchisees are always the strongest endorsements you're going to get on a particular franchise. This one comes from Janet Phillips. She's a Mathnasium franchisee. She's in Huntsville, Alabama. She says this. She says, math is a powerful skill needed for almost every career in today's economy, and students who do not have a solid grasp on math will be at a disadvantage in the workforce. After deciding I wanted to leave the corporate world to focus on helping students develop these needed math skills, I examined several learning center offerings and was most impressed with Mathnasium. Mathnasium offers a highly regarded math program customized to the student with proven results. It builds math skills, math confidence, and sets the foundation for future growth. The founder of this company, the guy who came up with the whole concept, whatever they're using, I'm always curious, what it is, because it sounds like it's an easy way to learn math,
Right.
So,
and in a way where, you make it as fun as you could for the student.
And that's what you want to do. And this whole thing also, Don, it helps the student build their confidence, too.
Good point.
I know, when I was a kid and I was struggling with geometry, I always remember that going back to, I think it was like 8th or 9th grade. Just, you don't want to go to school, It's,
right.
You just dread that one class. And so I wish that there was this kind of service available, when I was a kid. So I think it's great.
Yeah.
So, we'll have to keep our eye on them. I suspect these guys are going to continue to grow, over time. And so we'll keep watching them.
Yeah, it was a real nice, informative show.
Yeah.
And we always like having franchisees on as well, and we'll continue that into 2010.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the things we'll do more in 2010, because we're always looking to change and improve the show. And I think that's a lot of the feedback we got, is, people want to hear more from the franchisees as well. So
right.
I think it makes a good combination having the franchisor and franchisee on at the same time, and always interested in their background, too. It's amazing. We could talk a little about this either at the end of the show, or we can have we can end the year talking about the summary of the whole year. But we've seen a lot of people from corporate America switching over to franchising because they were either downsized, laid off, whatever that may be. So
right.
So
it's been a big trend. I'm sure our guest today, Dr. Hayes, will probably talk about that a little bit. And we're excited to have him on. Our friend Nancy Weingartner, from executive editor, Franchise Times Magazine, will be coming on in a few minutes. And
I can't wait to hear about Nancy's trip. I think she recently went to I think it was Kenya.
Right.
So I'm looking forward to that. So it's part of the world that I've always wanted to go to. So Yes, I'm looking forward to
We'll just be nice to her on this call. She'll take you next time.
I don't think her husband will like that. So.
Okay.
So any quick articles that you want to go over, or anything happening in franchising that we should discuss before we we'll bring the
Fox Small Business has a couple quick things.
Okay.
They interviewed Matthew Shea, President, CEO of the IFA, nation's largest association representing $2.5 trillion franchise industry, which consists of more than 900,000 franchise businesses headquartered in D.C. First question, in January, you forecast a year of cautious optimism in the face of economic challenge. You predicted a loss of 10,000 franchise businesses this year, more than 200,000 jobs, and a loss of $4.2 billion economic output, all attributed to the ongoing credit crisis. 10 months later, would you revise any of the forecasts? He says the biggest issue continues to be the availability of credit, in spite of the rescue package for financial institutions, and with the stimulus bill. The flow of credit to small business has essentially ceased. A number of banks have either left the market completely or stopped lending to small business. All, of course, very well documented. This is my business as well.
Right.
Many sources of credit have become virtually non-existent. Without credit for people to get started in business and then to operate a business in the short term before it becomes profitable, makes things very difficult. But he has been encouraged the past few weeks by statements from the President, the Treasury, and from the SBA. He feels that they're finally getting some traction. They're making the things we support a priority. They finally are realizing that access to credit for small businesses equals job creation. In October of last year, we were saying this is not an equity crisis but a credit crisis, and they finally agree with that. So the answer is to restore the flow of credit to small business.
Right.
Well, we'll see what that happens, Current administration's talking a big game, talking about doing things, but stuff's just not happening. And unfortunately, businesses could have needed help, 6 to 12 months ago.
Right. It's got to happen tomorrow, though. That's the whole thing. This is really, it's an emergency. It has to happen right away. So you're right. It can't just be lip service, saying we're going to talk about it.
Right.
And it's got to be very frustrating for the whole franchise community. You get to the point where they're like, let's say even like if you were a franchise broker, and you get down to the step where it comes time to getting financing for the franchise and they can't get it, and
right.
So you spend all this time, you can't get financing for the franchise. So it's got to be, I think it's been very frustrating for a lot of people out there in the franchise community.
And Marty, they predicted in January it was going to be a 25% decrease in access to credit.
Ouch.
It's actually more closer to 40%. And he says we're leaving tens of thousands of jobs on the table.
Right.
Another question, has a downturn of employment in the corporate world been a boon to small business ownership? And Matthew Shea says no question he has created a windfall of highly qualified individuals to become engaged in small business on the ownership side and the employee side. In many cases, people laid off from the corporate world make ideal candidates as franchisees or allow smart franchisees to pick up highly qualified talent.
Interesting. Well, yeah. Well, I guess we're going to have to, again, keep our eye on it. Did you have any thoughts on that? Or?
Well, I think we've talked about this a lot throughout the year. When there's negatives, what comes from it is positives,
Right.
And, we'll probably have franchisors will have better franchisees because more people are qualified because, unfortunately, they lost their job and they have good management skills or whatever. And that can maybe trickle down to even having some good employees, people with more skills.
True. That's a good point. Yeah, well, interesting article, and I know Matt Shea was recently interviewed in the most recent edition of Franchise Times, wasn't he?
Right, yeah.
Talking about the whole IFA thing. So it's probably a nice segue into bring in Nancy in. If you're a frequent listener to our weekly radio show, then you know what fans we are of Franchise Times magazine. And as I've commented on many occasions, Don, it's the only magazine I can read from cover to cover. So, hey, Nancy, happy Thanksgiving. How you doing today?
Fine. Thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving to you.
Oh, thanks, Nancy.
Hey, Nancy, it's Don. Good to have you on again. You getting all set for the holidays?
I am. Actually, right now I am sitting in a condo in Keystone, Colorado.
Wow, so you started it already, Nancy. Holiday's begun.
That's what we like about you. That's what we like about you, Nancy. It's always very interesting where you are, what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, Nancy, Don said if I'm nice to you, he said next year you'll take me to Kenya. So.
Absolutely.
I don't think your husband will like that.
Well, I don't think he was too happy I went with Dunn Brothers, actually.
There you
I
go.
went with two gentlemen from Dunn Brothers, so he probably wouldn't even think twice about having to go with
you. Did you want to talk about that trip? Because we were really excited to hear that you were there, Nancy. I mean, what were you doing there? I mean, was it a trip for Franchise Times or?
It was a really wonderful trip. I've gotten to know Chris Eilers, who is the CEO of Dunn Brothers Coffee, and we've been talking about how he's trying to find, actually they have found a niche in the coffee business, and it's specialty coffee. And so they're going down what they call to origin to meet the farmers and get to know their processes, and also they're teaching them a little bit better processes. So if they pick the cherries when they're ripe, which is what the coffee bean is in, then when they're red and then you leave the green ones and then a week later you go back and pick again, you're going to get better quality coffee, but it costs more money, it takes more time. And so they actually donated what was called an aquapulper to one of the co-ops down there. So they were down there kind of for the maiden launch of it. And so I followed them around and met the farmers and got to see some of the country, and it's just beautiful. The people were so amazing. They are so friendly, and it's interesting as an American going down there because they really, to us, seem so poor, and yet they seem so much happier. They're very, content with their lives. Of course, they'd like to make more money, with their coffee. Sure. But it was a wonderful experience. I also went to Kibera, which is one of the worst slums in Africa, actually in the world, and the CFW shops are there. That's through the Health Store Foundation, and that's a franchise that we profiled, I think it was in 2007, and it's social sector franchising, and I'm really interested in that. So I kind of went to see how that worked, and once again, it just, it's almost hard to explain how horrible the living conditions are in that slum. And then you see something kind of like a bright flower in this health care center where they don't turn anyone away, whether they can pay or not. And so it was, one of those things where it was really sad, and yet you kind of ended up with some hope too.
Yeah, it really puts life in perspective, seeing other cultures like that. And how is the language barrier? You're able to communicate with the people? Okay.
Well, that's what made it really exciting, because most of them speak English because they used to be a British colony. So they have Swahili that they speak, and a lot of different dialects. And during the ceremony, they'd kind of go back and forth between English and Swahili, and it was they're very emotional. So I really wish I knew what they were saying a lot of times, because they do a lot of clapping and chanting back to the. I think they had a lot of politicians come, and and they sang. The women came and sang and did kind of a ceremonial dance to start off the ceremony for the aquapulper. So it was just an incredible trip. I'm not sure. I've kind of broken it down into 2 or 3 different articles for the January issue, and not sure how I'm going to get it all in there. So
did you have to walk on? Did you have to walk on charcoal or anything like that?
No, I didn't.
Although I did see your room, Nancy. It was just fascinating. It was like your hotel room, or they get to where you were staying. It was just really fascinating. I went on to the Facebook page for Franchise Times, and it's just the pictures were wonderful.
Yeah, they were just so much fun, and I got to. They actually went to Ethiopia and Uganda too, and so I joined the tour kind of in the middle, and it was right as they were going to Masai Mara, which is the big animal preserve. Right. So it wasn't really exactly a hard duty to start out touring around in a Jeep looking at wild animals just right outside your window. So
that's incredible.
It was kind of fun too. You do want to see a little action.
Yeah. I was just going to say, Nancy, with franchising obviously growing so much internationally, this is a great part of your job, being able to go travel.
It really is. We don't get to do it. I mean, of course, it'd be wonderful if we got to go every time we wrote a story, but it is amazing when you go and you see it. And the thing that was so amazing in Nairobi, which is a really huge city, I don't think I saw any American franchises. There was no McDonald's.
Wow.
There was no Burger King. Pepsi. No, it was Coke. Coke was everywhere, and I hardly saw any Pepsi at all.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and that really would be the only franchise that I think I saw there.
Right. That's amazing.
Probably just so
American
much room for
franchise.
expansion, just worldwide. I'm sure there's just so much more marketplace for those successful franchises to grow. The coffee industry's been interesting. They've gone kind of through some ups and downs the last few years, right?
Right.
Exactly. And now with Starbucks, it's kind of interesting to see because I think they got so large that they kind of lost that romance of being the, kind of the counterculture. And so they're, I think, kind of going back and evaluating their whole plan. And so I think it might leave some room for smaller chains like Dunn Brothers and Caribou. And with Dunn Brothers, they come back and tell the story of where they get the coffee. And so they're really trying to create this relationship with their customers. And everything we hear about franchising, that is the key to it, is that you've got to stand out in a really crowded field. And I think it's kind of exciting to see different companies doing that.
Yeah, we'd like to get them on the show. You're our contact person. You're our key there.
That's right.
To get
All
Dunn Brothers
right.
on the show.
Absolutely.
You would really enjoy talking to them because they also go to Latin America and South America, to Colombia, different places to meet the farmers there also.
Right.
So they would have lots of great stories about, and their marketing is really fun. So they've done a really good job with marketing.
Excellent. You had a great trip. So what are some of the interesting stories and stuff you're working on, Nancy, for next month's edition, the next Franchise Times edition?
Well, in January, we're going to look at 20 to watch. And so if any of your listeners have any companies or people that they think are going to be doing great things or maybe precarious things in 2010, they can email me at nancyw@franchisetimes. But it's always kind of fun just to look at who's doing what, and especially this year when the economy's been so bad and financing has been so hard, it's kind of fun to see a few people that are really standing out and really not being afraid of the economy, but using this as a means of growing when other people are kind of sitting back.
Absolutely.
Well, we've just had a few of those franchises on the show, Marty, right? Like the Express.
Oh, absolutely. That's one I was thinking of.
Transport. Express Medical Transport was an interesting franchise growing.
Because they're in the senior care industry, but they're doing something different. I think these like the first to actually create this like transporting system of transporting seniors right down to hospital and all sorts of things. Yeah, I'll have to send you a link to that particular show, Nancy.
Yeah, because I don't think I know them.
Yeah,
that would be good. And I heard about Mathnasium, which sounded really interesting too. I've heard of them before, but it's kind of nice to know they were growing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, they're doing very well. Yeah.
Yeah, I had trouble with math too. I also had trouble with spelling, so I'm probably like you, Don. It's amazing I'm in this field.
Ended up being a writer, it's fascinating. Yes, we have about 30 seconds. What's the best way for our listeners to get more information on Franchise Times? Is there a website they can go to? They can go to www.franchisetimes.com. They can also, we put up part of the magazine, so they aren't going to get the complete magazine, but they're going to get the main features and our columnist. And then they can also, there's a link on there if they want to subscribe. We also give out complimentary subscriptions for a few months for people to try it. So all of that should be on the website. That's great. And I want to wish you a happy Thanksgiving, Nancy, and we look forward to having you guys back in the beginning of the year on the show again.
Thank you so much. You have a happy Thanksgiving, too.
Have a great holiday.
Nancy.
Tell everybody we said hello. Take care.
I will. Bye.
She's always fantastic, isn't she, Don?
Yes.
What a great guest. So.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a quick break. I see Dr. Hayes has called in, and we'll be right back with more franchise interviews.
Okay, you've got my attention.
It's a rare event in the world of franchising when an opportunity comes your way that can and will thrive in almost any economic environment. It's here, and its name is Big Mouth Advertising.
Big Mouth.
BMA is a leader in the exciting world of mobile media advertising. Why is mobile media advertising able to defy the economic cycles? The answer is obvious. In times of economic weakness, advertising is crucial for survival as the consumer dollar is scarce and the competition fierce. What is mobile media? It's the newest and fastest growing segment in the advertising world. Mobile media brings the message directly to the consumer. Mobile media goes to the consumer in traffic where he eats and where he plays. It quite simply cannot be turned off or thrown out. And when you join the Big Mouth team as a franchisee, you are joining the best. The Big Mouth advantage is simple and successful. We invest in a strong infrastructure and in great people. As a franchisee, you have access to this entire system, including telemarketing, sales maximization, general and administrative support, design and creative services, even billing and collection services. All you need is a mobile media vehicle, a driver, and the willingness to create a financially sound and limitless business for yourself. There are no long-term leases to sign, no expensive build-outs, no office personnel to hire. You will be part of the Big Mouth advertising community and share its entire website and reception services, as well as its complete back-office services. This virtual office guarantees you the freedom to close those sales that will make you a success. We are so proud of our successes that we have voluntarily disclosed our revenue statements. Now, how many other franchises are doing that? Even in these historically rough financial times, Big Mouth advertising has become a dominant force in the mobile media industry. Join the Big Mouth team and take the first step toward financial freedom. Please call Ron at 888-98-GO-BIG. That's 888-98-GO-BIG. Big Mouth! Need a business loan? Talk to Diamond Financial Services, the experts in franchise financing nationwide. Whether you're looking to start a franchise, acquire an existing franchise, or expand your territory through opening new locations, Diamond Financial stands by your side start to finish. From pre-qualification to packaging and presenting your application to securing a financial commitment, and through the loan closing process, Diamond Financial is there. While you're waiting, thousands of others are making their financial dreams come true. Don't wait any longer. Pre-qualify now by completing a confidential, no-obligation financial analysis. Let's face it, traditional banks just aren't in the business of financing small business. At Diamond Financial, we specialize in securing franchise loans from $100,000 to $3 million and equipment leasing up to $150,000. Let us help you get started. Go to www.franchisefunding.net or call 877-508-2274. That's franchisefunding.net, 877-508-2274.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Franchise Interviews, where we're asking the franchisor who owns one. I'm your host, Marty McDermott, with my co-host, Don Johnson. And if you've ever dreamed of owning your own business, then you've come to the right place. And as we were saying earlier, Don, we have a great show today because we're meeting with Dr. John P. Hayes. And since 1979, Dr. Hayes has worked in the franchise community as a consultant, a franchisee, and a franchisor. He's the author of several franchise-related books and countless articles that have appeared in media worldwide. Hey, Dr. Hayes, happy Thanksgiving. How are you today?
Well, happy Thanksgiving to all of you and to your listeners, and it's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you, Dr. Hayes. Dr. Hayes, joining us is my co-host, Don Johnson, and I know, Don, you wanted to say good morning to Dr. Hayes.
Dr. Hayes, we appreciate you coming on. This is really, having you on is kind of the perfect situation, this being our 150th show, 3 years with everything you've done in franchising. It really pulls everything together what Marty and I have done the last few years. So thanks for coming on.
Well, you're welcome. It's an honor for me to be with you.
Thanks, Dr. Hayes. Dr. Hayes, the first time, I don't know if you wouldn't remember, but I met you 10 years ago. You were giving a presentation on capturing and keeping a customer.
Yeah.
And the following day, I purchased your recordings of your teleseminar course. And I have to tell you, it was one of the best investments I ever made in my life. I still have those cassettes to this day, and I think it's the only reason I keep my cassette players. So Just a wonderful.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you saying so. That's has been my most popular seminar through the years is how to capture and keep customers.
It's a wonderful presentation. I use it to this day. I'm a professor today, and I attribute part of that to you, because I use a lot of your style. And
great.
It's really a great presentation. Then I met you. It was in 2005. I saw you speak again at the IFA convention in Washington, D.C., and it was a 2-hour presentation. And I thought it was really the best presentation on the topic of franchising. And
thank you.
Absolutely. And you also, I don't know if you know this, you also gave me my topic for my thesis. For my
great.
So you have played a very important role in my life, and you probably don't even know it. So I just wanted to acknowledge that to you.
Nice to hear. It makes Thanksgiving week all the more special to hear things like that.
Absolutely.
In my past, I was a college professor, as I think you probably know. And in fact, I'm looking to go back to a university right now, either in the spring semester or in the fall. That's always been my plan to teach again. Right. And the greatest feeling comes from getting an email from someone that you rescued out of your junk folder, and someone sends you an email and says, you probably don't remember me, but 20 years ago I was in your classroom and you said this, this, and this. And sometimes they say that I said they'd never make it, and now they're the editor of something or another. In other cases, it's because I encouraged them in some way. And so those are the best messages you can ever get.
Absolutely.
Right, changing someone's life. Yeah, definitely.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. How did you get involved in franchising, Dr. Hayes? I know bits and pieces of it, but I know it's a great story.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story to me. I don't know that it is to other people, but particularly as a writer and as a student of so many different topics and disciplines, I was a young college professor at Temple University in Philadelphia, which is, to me, the greatest city in the world. I'm not from there, but I lived there 20 years. And Temple has a fantastic school of journalism, and I was the head of the magazine writing program. And one day, the continuing education department said that they were looking for new courses to be taught by faculty, and you could get a couple $100 if you teach on a Saturday morning. So I came up with this course called How to Write a Book to Promote Your Business. And I had never done that. At that time, I hadn't done it. I've since done it many, many times. But I hadn't done it then, but I knew it was a great idea. I knew it would work. And so they offered the course, and I think it was something like $195 or something like that to take the course. And they called the Friday before, and they said, well, we've got, or they called like 10 days before, and said, we've got bad news and we've got good news. Bad news is that nobody signed up. There's no paid registrants for your course, so we've had to cancel it. Well, that was very disappointing, and I couldn't imagine what's the good news. And they said 3 people said they really wanted to be in the course, but they could not make it on that particular Saturday, and they gave us their phone number, and they want you to call them. They need to talk to you. Well, I ended up doing a book with all 3 of those people. The first one was a divorce attorney, the number one emerging divorce attorney in the Delaware Valley. Pennsylvania had just passed no-fault divorce law, and this fellow wrote a book called Divorce, Your Fault, My Fault, No Fault. He needed to get it ghost-edited. He needed to get it self-published, and I ended up handling that project for him, and he went on to do extremely well, all kinds of publicity for his business, and still very active today in Philadelphia. Then the second guy said that he was a guru in productivity and manufacturing. He could teach manufacturers how to increase productivity, but it cost $100,000 to buy his consulting and to buy his software, and he was having a hard time getting his foot in the door and selling that to various companies. And he thought if he had a book, he would be able to do it. He was exactly right. And actually, he wanted to self-publish that book, but Amacom, people confuse that with Amazon. That wasn't around at the time. Amacom was the American Management Association's communications division. They published that book called How to Win Productivity in Manufacturing. And then the third guy called and said, I called him and he said, well, I'm a franchisor. And I said, okay. I really, 1979, hadn't even heard the word. I mean, I had to go look it up, find out what that's about. I still didn't know what it meant. And so then I met him. He wanted me to write a newsletter for him, for his franchisees. And ultimately, he wanted me to write a book. And that's when I wrote Franchising the Inside Story, which was the first book on how to buy a franchise. Yeah. And that book really created my career without me having any inkling what would happen. When the book came out, Harper published that book. When I did the media tour, the media would always introduce me sort of like you guys did this morning, but I can at least say this morning I deserved it. But back in those days, they would say that I was the world-renowned authority on franchising. And, you know, I had spent all of maybe 6 months writing about franchising and learning about franchising. I had interviewed 100 people, and they were, you know, IFA and franchisors and franchisees and the United States government and lawyers. So I really, as a journalist, I had a good knowledge, working knowledge of franchising, and I was able to do a terrific book that helped a lot of people. I still get people who come up to me to this day, even though I think that book might be available as a used book on Amazon, but it's not, you know, in bookstores. But people still come up and say, you know, I read that before I bought a franchise, and I want to thank you. Or in some cases, they don't want to thank me because they're not happy that they bought a franchise in some cases. So that's how I got involved in it. The book created an opportunity where IFA put me on their traveling faculty for about 3 years. I toured the country teaching with a group of other faculty that IFA had doing regional meetings, and that introduced me to a lot of franchisors and to suppliers who wanted me to write for them and teach and train for them. And then the IFA introduced the international trade missions. They took that over from the Department of Commerce, and they needed someone who would go on the trade missions and travel with, at the time it was Peter Holt, and he and I are terrific friends to this day. He, of course, went on from IFA to work with a number of franchise companies like Mailboxes, et cetera, and now he's with Tasty Delight. Right. But we traveled all over the world with a dozen franchisors at a time doing trade missions to sell master licenses. That introduced me to media and to franchisors internationally, and it was just a great opportunity to build a terrific business that I operated for about 10 years until I got worn out, and I had, at the height of my business, I had about 20 employees, and I said, you know, I can't do this anymore. I always had 25 to 30 franchisor clients. 95, 96, I sold the business so that I could concentrate on writing and speaking, ultimately wanting to go back to a university. And I was on the Dwyer Group board of directors, one of the best franchise companies in the world. And I was on that board for about 12, 13 years until the company went public, went private. I mean, the company went public when I went on the board in about 90, 91, somewhere in there, and I was on the board until 2003 when the company was purchased and taken private. Wow. So
what was it, Dr. Hayes, initially? I mean, you wrote the book, you know, kind of a trendsetter, writing the book, Franchising Inside Story, but what was it about franchising that you were so attracted to initially to want to write the book? You know,
when I discovered, well, first of all, I'll tell you the truth. I wrote the book because the guy paid me $8,000. Right. And, you know, I was a college professor at that time, making about $11,000, $12,000. Right. So the guy gave me $8,000, and I think I used that to buy a house or something at the time. But here is the thing that kept me interested for 30 years that I've been involved this year in franchising, and that is I've met the first franchisees I ever met were this client who wanted to do the book, Trimark. It's not around anymore, but they were a competitor to Valpak. And Valpak had a couple hundred franchisees, and Trimark had 80. And Trimark was like Burger King trying to catch McDonald's. And, you know, it was never going to happen, but they could still have a great business. Well, I started meeting with their franchisees who came out of advertising, who came out of teaching, who came out of management, who came out of sales. They came from all kinds of backgrounds. One had been a financial planner, and they got into Trimark because they liked working in a community. They liked the hours of that kind of a job. They didn't want to travel. They controlled their own destiny. by how many salespeople they hired, how many doors they knocked on, and how aggressive they were, and how good they were at going out and selling cooperative direct mail advertising is what it was all about. They had to sell the coupons, and they had their own destiny in their hands, and I loved that. And they didn't have to reinvent the wheel. Right. They were given the system by the franchisor, who said, if you do this, then you do this, and if you'll do this, and then you make this happen, then you send everything to us in Wilmington, Delaware. We do all the printing, we do all the collating, we do all the mailing out. All you've got to do is sell and take care of your clients and take care of your small business, which would usually involve maybe 3 or 4 people. I thought, and some of them worked out of their home. And, I was making $11,000 a year. They were making $50,000, $80,000, $150,000 a year. And I thought, wow, I could do that. I could do that kind of a business. And then I found out there were a whole lot of other businesses that I could do as well. And I went on to write a book with David Sandler, the founder of the Sandler Sales Institute, another terrific franchise. I wrote You Can't Teach a Kid to Ride a Bike at a Seminar. It's a book that the Sandler franchisees still sell to this day. I love that franchise too and thought I could do this franchise. Again, David Sandler created a system that showed you how to do the training, how to go out and sell your services, how to build your business. You could operate out of your home or a small office or a conference center, depending on how big you wanted to build your business. And so these businesses were fascinating. And when I met a guy like Don Dwyer, well, all the light bulbs turned on and the excitement really, the entrepreneurial juices really got going, because Don was a guy who just inspired anybody who would sit down with him for 5 or 10 minutes. I remember a guy, Freddie Mittman, who became Don's master franchisee for Rainbow. I think it was for Rainbow International. I might have that wrong. It might have been one of Don's other. It might have been Mr. Reuter, the plumbing franchise. But Freddie, who was a motivational speaker in the UK, met Don at an airport, talked to him for an hour, and said, I don't know anything about franchising. I don't know anything about you. I don't know anything about the particular business, but I want to be the master franchisee for the Dwyer Group in the United Kingdom. I think he and his family, I think, still are to this day. Don was so inspirational, he had that effect on me. I traveled all over the world with Don, and I learned that, if I didn't want to be in the carpet cleaning or the water restoration business particularly, but I met a lot of people who, again, they had been teachers and salespeople and advertising people and middle managers, and they bought a Rainbow International franchise, and they were building it and making $100,000 and $150,000. Don didn't think it was possible himself, but at one of his conventions, he rewarded a guy who built $1 million carpet cleaning business. It was unheard of at the time. So, with all those exciting things, and I didn't even get into the retail side, the food side. There's lots of exciting things there as well that people can do as franchisees. And I worked with non-competitive companies. So because I was working with Don and he was Rainbow carpet cleaning and then fire and water restoration later, I couldn't work with any of his competitors at the same time. So I was always working with, if I was working with mailboxes, et cetera, then I couldn't work with anybody else. Janny King was, such a simple, wonderful business, and Janny King was my client for many, many years, so I couldn't work with Coverall or any of the other competitors to them. So I always had different businesses that I worked with, and it was always fascinating, and that's what kept me interested all these years.
You should write a book, Dr. Hayes, about all of your experiences.
I plan to do that. Yeah, that's definitely, but I think I got to wait until I no longer want to work in franchising, because I can't, to write that book, I'm going to tell you the truth about franchising and the people in franchising particularly, and some of the companies in franchising. And it makes my point that I've always said franchising is not for everyone. In fact, it's not for most people. Yeah. And all franchisors are not created equal. Some are a whole lot better than others. And it's your job as a prospective franchisee to know before you invest in one which ones are the good ones and which ones are not. There are some bad guys in franchising. Some of them have come and gone. some of them still remain. But, you know, there have been lots of it's an industry that's it's not really an industry. It's a community of 75-plus industries that use franchising as their method of distribution. There's a lot of politics. There's a lot of backstabbing. There are a lot of petty jealousies and stupidities and so forth.
Yeah, like in any industry you're going to have.
In any industry, absolutely. Yeah. It makes it, you know, certainly makes it more interesting.
Right.
And when you're on the inside, you know what the truth really is.
Right.
You know, you find it.
Yeah. Well, let's stay on that theme, Dr. Hayes. Well, I mean, you mentioned over 75 industries. Obviously, there's more than 3,000 franchise opportunities. Maybe talk a little bit more about the advice that you would give to our listeners, you know, potential franchise owners when they're looking at buying a franchise. What should they be looking out for, and what should they be doing?
Yeah, well, you know, this is what I cover frequently. For more than 20 years, I've been teaching for the International Franchise Expo, the A to Z's of buying a franchise. And I would say, you know, what comes to mind immediately, and this is sort of because of something that I've been writing for my blog lately, don't buy the hot franchise just because it's a hot franchise and you think that, you know, buying a hot franchise is the way to go. Buying a hot franchise is the quickest way to get burned in franchising. And I think I offer a free webinar. I think it's still posted on my blog at howtobuyafranchise.com that people can go and download that. And I make the points about, you know, why you don't want to necessarily buy a franchise because it's hot. And yet, you know, I hear that more often. People will come up to me and say, I just heard everything you said for the last 2 hours, but what's hot? What's the, you know, I want to buy a franchise. I don't care what industry it's in. I want to buy what's hot. And, you know, I really don't even want to talk to those people, but there are plenty of franchisors who will talk to them if they can convince them, you know, that they've got a hot franchise, because franchisors, particularly today, need to sell franchises, and they're looking for, you know, if they've got sex appeal and they can use that. So that's, you know, one of the things that a franchise prospect needs to be careful of. And then, you know, I think you've got to do whether you do a self-evaluation, and unless you're well-educated in how to do this, you're not going to be able to do it successfully. In Franchising the Inside Story, I used a little mini test, entrepreneurial quiz that the Wharton School gave me that some people, you know, can easily use to gauge their entrepreneurial talent or skill, but that's not exactly accurate when it comes to franchising, because, you know, you don't need to be an entrepreneur to be a franchisee. And a lot of people, on one of the Twitter arguments that I had some time back with a guy was, well, you know, well, what do you mean you're not to be an entrepreneur? You're going to get into business and you're going to open your own franchise. You better be entrepreneurial. Well, my experience is the more entrepreneurial you are, the less likely you are to succeed as a franchisee. And that's because when you're entrepreneurial, you're going to reinvent the wheel, and franchisors don't want you to do that. So, you know, you've got to know your personality profile. What are your behaviors? What are your skills? What are your values? And by the way, the best way to do that today is to go to franchisenavigator.com, which I've discovered in the last maybe 3 months. I have written about it a couple of times in some of my blogs. More and more franchisors are using that, and if you haven't had Craig Slavin on your show, that's somebody who you ought to talk to. I do a lot of coaching with people, and I tell them that they need to go take the Franchise Navigator profile first thing, because that way, when I have their profile in front of me, I know the kind of franchise, or at least the industries that will work for them most likely and will not work for them. I also know if they're cut out to be a franchisee based on what I see. And, you know, it's not foolproof, so you can't, this isn't just because you take a profile, you can't say to somebody, well, you're not a prospect for a franchisee. You certainly can be a prospect for a franchisee, but you may have to make some modifications to the way you manage business and approach business and think about business before you get into a particular franchise. And I'll give you a very good example of that. A lot of people, when I worked with mailboxes, et cetera, now the UPS store, a lot of people bought that franchise because they thought it was easy. And it was kind of a hot franchise. It was low cost, it was retail, It was you could open in a strip center, and people kind of got the idea that you worked behind the counter, and customers came in, and they bought stamps, and they had packages, and they needed copies, and maybe they needed your notary service, and it was just a nice little 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 type of 5-day-a-week business. Well, the real money makers in mailboxes, etc., were never found behind the counter, or rarely found behind the counter. They were out on the street knocking on doors, getting small businesses to come into their mailboxes, etc., to do business with them. Volumes of copying and printing services and volumes of shipping. They didn't want to, ship a book or two at a time. They wanted 1,000 pieces of mail that you were mailing out, and they couldn't close at 6 o'clock in the evening. They had to stay open for the small business guy until 8 o'clock in the evening, and they had to be open at 6 o'clock in the morning in some cases. Well, a lot of those folks said, gee, I don't want to do that. I bought this because I sort of wanted to retire. Well, you could run the business doing that, but if that was your profile and your skill set and that was your value base, you weren't going to make 6 figures. You weren't going to do a couple $100,000 owning mailboxes, et cetera, or any of their competitors. You had to be a sales and marketing guy. And if that wasn't your profile, then you bought the wrong business.
Wow. So it's so key to, of course, do your due diligence, think about your quality of life, don't make quick decisions, don't go for the hot franchise. And by the way, Marty, that is a great quote in franchising. Oh, don't buy the hot franchise. Yeah. Fastest way to get burned. We keep track of all that, Dr. Hayes. Good quote.
Well, good.
But, yeah, I mean, this is all great advice, of course. Talk to us a little bit about franchisemastermind.com.
Yeah, well, when I had been the CEO of what was a really terrific franchise company until the economy sort of took a bite out of it, and the company had to be sold. Most people would know it as We Buy Ugly Houses. And again, I started in 2001 as an advisor to the founder of that company, and then I went on his board, and I became a franchisee of the company as well, because it really was, at the time, that real estate investing was a sexy business, and everybody wanted to be in real estate investing. And We Buy Ugly Houses was the only business of its kind. There was really no competitor in franchising. So the company built very quickly, and I had a partner who ran my franchise in Dallas. We did very well with it. Unfortunately, the founder of the company got cancer, and he was given a few months to live, and he only lived a few months. And in that period of time, he asked me if I would become CEO of the company. And I'd been on the board at the time, and I said yes. And so and we continued for a couple of years building out that company up to about 265 franchises. And it was an amazing opportunity for me because I had not been a franchisor. I'd been a master licensee of an accounting franchise when I worked in the Philadelphia market, but I had not been a franchisor of a major company like this. And to have the opportunity to build relationships with franchisees was just terrific. And the first 2 years were great. The last 2 years were just horrendous as the economy, once subprime left the market, then investing in real estate became a nightmare. And it continues to be a very difficult industry for people. A lot of people who got into it are now out of it and wishing they had never gotten into it because they've lost a lot of money. But I left there in January, the end of January this year. And one of the things, when I look back on, okay, what am I going to do now? And I wanted to go back to a university, but I wasn't going to go back this year. I was going to wait some time and think some things through, and a couple more books that I want to write. So one of the things that I had done at HomeVestors, I created a mastermind for franchisees. Some of the better franchisees were not necessarily complaining, but they were saying, we've learned everything in the last 5 to 7, 10 years that we could learn, and we're not sure that we're going to renew our franchise agreement when the time comes. Well, I put 8 of those franchisees together in a peer-to-peer mastermind program that met quarterly, And I facilitated the mastermind and created a program that the peers would follow. And the purpose was one would be, they would take turns being a host of the mastermind. And the host would tell their story. Here's why I became a franchisee. Here's how I built the business. Here's how well I've done financially and otherwise. Here's what I think my problems are. Here's what I like about the business. Here's what I don't like about the business. Here are the top 3 issues that I'd like to solve. Can my peers help me in the mastermind? That program became so popular, we ended up with 5 masterminds, and I taught other people how to run masterminds at HomeVestors, at We Buy Ugly Houses. So we had about 40 franchisees involved in a mastermind. So when I left, I said, the franchise mastermind is where I'm going to continue my blogging about franchising. So I have both howtobuyafranchise.com and franchisemastermind.com. And the franchise mastermind is more for the franchisor and the existing franchisee and multi-unit, multi-level, multi-concept franchisees and international franchising. And so I then decided that I'm going to launch a group of, I'm going to launch several different masterminds, one for franchisors, emerging franchisors who want to learn from other franchisors. I'm going to work in 2010 on putting a franchisor mastermind in place. And then I'm either going to do a franchisee mastermind where the 8 members are from different franchise companies, or in one case I'm talking to a franchisor who wants me to do the mastermind exclusively for their franchisees and put 8 of their franchisees into a mastermind. In that case, they'd all be the same franchisees. And then I'm also looking at doing a supplier mastermind because there are so many people who are trying to sell things to franchisors and franchisees, and they really need help in how to build their business. And so the economy has made it difficult to get those masterminds off the ground in 2009. So I've done a lot of pre-planning and a lot of thinking out the process for 2010.
That's great. But Dr. Hayes, you've been involved in franchise now since 30 years. I mean, what changes have you seen in that time? I guess it's a lot of them.
Well, the most obvious change has been finance. And my next ebook will be How to Get the Bank to Say Yes. I've done all the research and all the interviews on how to get financing. And the new order of franchising as we emerge, or the new order of franchise financing as we emerge out of this recession, a lot of franchisors are going to be left behind. A lot of multi-unit franchisees are going to be left behind without understanding that the new order of franchise financing requires you to be a different kind of prospect and is going to demand more of the franchisor. How about the day when you could just go find a franchise you wanted to buy. You could have a few dings on your credit history. You didn't necessarily have to have that much collateral. You could get some financing from the franchisor. If you were a veteran, you could get some help from VetFran. If the franchise company had any track record at all, even without an Item 19, you could get the funding through leasing companies and through a national bank, and you could then buy a franchise. Well, that is all gone. Those days are over. It's an entirely different story today, and many franchisors don't know that, or they don't know what the story is, or they don't know how to change their business so that they can meet the demands of the new order of franchise financing. So that's the biggest change that's occurred. It used to be much easier to be able to get into your own franchise and to expand it using other people's money. You're not so easily able to do that today.
Are you surprised about the number of systems there are today, Dr. Hayes? I mean, from when you started to where we are now. I mean, did you see it going that
Yeah,
far?
the growth has been phenomenal. And I often scratch my head and say, I love pizza as much as anybody else, and I have my favorite brands,
right.
And I don't know how many more pizza franchises we need, but I just had a call a couple of months ago from a pizzeria in San Antonio that claims they got the greatest concept and they want to franchise their pizza business. Same with other kinds of. Look at Five Guys and Smashburger. Who would have thought?
Yeah,
that in the age of McDonald's, which does a pretty good job, and Wendy's, which does I think a great job, and Sonic. Who would think that we need another burger chain? But we certainly have it.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. We recently had a Five Guys open up where we are here, and we had them on the show, Dr. Hayes, and it's just amazing how packed that place always is. I mean, everyone's talking about it, so you're right about that. It's a great example. What's the best way for our listeners to get more information on all your different services? I know you have a lot of different websites, Dr. Hayes. You can plug all of them if you like.
Well, the two primary websites are franchisemastermind.com, and I blog there frequently, and then howtobuyaFranchise.com, and that's the best way to get in touch with me and to find out what I'm up to and what I'm doing and different things that I'm offering to people.
That's great. And I want to thank you again, Dr. Hayes. It's a privilege and an honor to finally get to speak to you on our show, and wish you a happy Thanksgiving, and love to have you back in 2010.
Absolutely. Just let me know. It was a great pleasure. I really appreciate you asking me.
Thank you, Dr. Hayes. You're great. Thank you.
Take care. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy
Thank you.
Great show, huh, Don?
Yeah, I mean, great stories, great advice. I could have, done a show in another 2 hours.
I know. Could have been a 4-hour show, quite
listening
honestly.
to him.
Yeah, I mean, he really is fantastic, So we're going to have to get him back in 2010, And,
without a doubt. Yeah, we really, could have done a show much longer. We didn't even get to all of our questions. It's just incredible. He's just so knowledgeable, so experienced, and we didn't get to talk to him about his recent work he's doing with Michael Gerber. So
absolutely. I want to mention that one too. Yeah. So anyway, you did a great job, Don. For our listeners, go to franchiseinterviews.com. Go to franchisefunding.net. We actually have a treat for our listeners today, don't we? Because they're going to get to hear our Great Quotes in Franchising podcast, which also has just skyrocketed. We have several thousand listeners to our podcast every single month. So we have some clips that we've done over the last several months that our listeners are going to get to hear right now. So the show's not even over yet. Right. We're still going to get to hear a lot more. But I wish you a happy Thanksgiving now, Don. And
yes,
we'll have another great show next week.
Yeah, we'll just keep going. It's our 150th, and we look forward to the next 150th.
It's amazing, isn't it? 3 years, and it's just been incredible. So, good job,
quick. Yeah, we have so much. Just remind people to go to, look through the archive, all the 150 hours of shows at franchiseinterviews.com. So much information, so many great guests, a lot of franchisees talking about their experience.
Absolutely. So good job, Don. Happy Thanksgiving, and I'll be talking to you next week.
Great, Marty. Take care.
Take care, Don.
Bye-bye.
Podcast you get to hear, Great Quote in Franchising. Don and I have been hosting franchise interviews now over 2 years with over 111 shows under our belt, and during that time frame, we've had some incredible quotes on our show. Today, you're going to get to hear from Steve Biegelman, who is a franchise expert and veteran, and Steve answers the question, should I go with a small franchise system or a large franchise system? And I thought Steve's response was quite brilliant. So first, you'll hear a quick word from our sponsor, and then Steve Biegelman with, should I go with a small franchise system or a large franchise system? Take care, everyone.
Are you one of those special people who are willing to go after your dreams and goals? Are you ready to fulfill that dream of owning your own business with the security of a proven brand? The opportunity to take control of your future and own a Rita's Italian Ice franchise is within your reach.
Rita's is seeking success-oriented individuals who are ready to make a change in their life, and Rita's offers unparalleled training and support to assure your success. And did you know, the frozen treat industry is a recession-proof industry, and there are Rita's in 23 states currently with 540 stores open. Rita's Italian Ice has been around for 25 years and is listed as a top-performing franchise by the Wall Street Journal.
Now here's the really good part. Rita's Italian Ice is a unique and amazing taste treat. It's smoother than a snow cone, and it combines ice with real fresh fruit. The real fruit adds dramatically to the taste, and it comes in over 40 flavors. The ice and fruit are mixed on site and made fresh daily, and it is delicious.
You'll want to know more about this exciting and successful franchise opportunity. Go to www.ownaritas.com and get all your questions answered. That's www.ownaritas.com to take control of your dreams and future today. You don't want to wait any longer to be a part of this adventure. www.ownaritas.com.
So, you've been with small startup franchise companies. You've been at the larger companies. What are some of the big differences between those two type of scenarios, Steve?
Well, smaller companies obviously give a lot of attention to the franchisee. So, every franchisee, that franchisee by name. You can get a hold of, the owners of the company or the CEO of the franchise system. Pretty much you build very, very strong relationships when you're joining a smaller system. When you're joining a smaller system, you also typically get your choice of prime territory, maybe in your backyard where you want to be and open a business. You don't want to have to drive an hour to your store every day or your location. Right. So you get the prime territory, you get to know the management team, the owners of the company and the concept, and really build that strong relationship. The challenge is the brands aren't as well known, so it takes time. And, obviously you need to make a decision when you're a franchise candidate or a potential franchisee looking at concepts. Do you want to join a company that's in the infancy and the growth stage, or do you want to join a more established, national brand that has presence but's going to have limited locations available? You might have to go a much farther distance to get that location, and they have, proven systems in place. So you're going to have to follow that system to a T, and you're going to deal typically with a regional operations manager and training managers in that region. You're not going to get to know the top level of management in a large company, whether it's a Dunkin' Donuts or a Dairy Queen or Yum Brands. You're just not going to have that kind of interaction with the top management team. They're just too large of an organization. Again, great companies, but it all depends what you're looking for as a franchise, candidate or potential franchisee.
It's a real interesting question, though, huh? That's where a franchise consultant come in, speaking to an expert like yourself, to really educate someone for that type of decision.
Sure. It is a big decision, and you need to really know yourself to know what you're looking for. If you want an absolute 100% proven concept that's been around, tried and true, then you're going to want to join one of the big chains that have been around for 20-plus years that have, thousands of units. But if you're more an entrepreneur and you kind of want to feel things out and be a part of the growth strategy of an organization and impact some of the marketing decisions and decisions from an operations standpoint for an organization, then you're going to look towards a smaller company that you can have impact, that you could be on the Franchise Advisory Council, that you could really be involved with decisions that the company makes for growing the brand forward.
If you have more territory, be in on the early part of the curve for that franchise that maybe has had some success so far, but they're really early in their process. So, yeah, real interesting.
Yep. In 2016.
Hi, everyone. This is Marty McDermott from Franchise Interviews, and welcome to another edition of Great Quotes in Franchising. For each podcast, you get to hear a great quote in franchising. Don and I have been hosting Franchise Interviews for over 2 years now, over 110 shows, and during that time, we've had some incredible quotes on our show. Today, you're going to get to hear from Barry Falcon, who's one of the founders of the Shelf Genie franchise concept. And, a lot of times, if you're a listener to our show, you know that Don and I compare franchising in many instances to a marriage, not to diminish the sanctity of marriage, but it really is, in some instances, that big. Barry had a wonderful quote. We're going to call this podcast Date a Little, and I think it's going to make a little more sense as we dive deeper into it. So enjoy. You're going to hear a message from our sponsor, and then again, Date a Little podcast, and we'll see you again soon with another edition of Great Quotes in Franchising
It's a rare event in the world of franchising when an opportunity comes your way that can and will thrive in almost any economic environment. It's here, and its name is Big Mouth Advertising.
Big Mouth.
BMA is a leader in the exciting world of mobile media advertising. Why is mobile media advertising able to defy the economic cycles? The answer is obvious. In times of economic weakness, advertising is crucial for survival as the consumer dollar is scarce and the competition fierce. What is mobile media?